it was inevitable. We're gonna go here, and we're here now. Leafs corner. You guys talked about the Nick Watt trade, I believe, on the previous pod a couple days ago. But two more moves: Bobby McMann going to Seattle, Scott Laughton going to LA. Let's just round table this. Like, how did the Leafs do? I don't know who wants to start. I'm just gonna step away from the mic, and we're just gonna go into it. I know, Christian, you probably got some thoughts. You probably have a whole list of items you wanted to get into. Let me maybe throw it over to you to start.
Yeah, listen, we've got time limit for the pods, so I'm gonna go
Sure.
very condensed here. But just summing it up for the Leafs deadline, you look at it and you think you got a first, you got a second, you got a third, you got a fourth, you got a fifth. Sounds like Tanner Jeannot. We traded for Tanner Jeannot, guys. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, but that is one of the first thoughts I had there. No, it's a pretty meh deadline. You kind of just you got a fair amount for the players that you traded, I guess. I do think on the buyer and seller conversation we had before, some of the timing didn't do well for the Leafs. I do think if they had entered this trade market a bit earlier with a Laughton or a McMann, you're maybe looking at some slightly higher prices. I just heard today James Myrtle on the Leaf Report, The Athletic. He said that he had heard from other execs around the league that Bobby McMahon's comparable for trade return was Kiefer Sherwood, a
Mhm.
second pick, 2 second picks. So I do think if you're making that trade closer to when the Kiefer Sherwood trade, that was very early, but let's even just say January, right? Like before the Olympic break, maybe you're actually getting 2 second round picks. Same goes for Scott Laughton. Like Nick Dowd had just gone the day before, I believe, for a little bit more. Michael McCarron, the different player. But once again, I do think they entered the market with those guys a little later. And Nick Raw was more the exception to that rule than the standard, right? So I think that's the first thing there. And then I think really the other thing to talk about was kind of Brad Treliving, right? He did tons and tons of media availabilities as a GM does after deadlines. Um, and my takeaway there is, um, he didn't reveal a lot because I don't think he has the reins to reveal a lot, right? Like he can't be like, well, this is the plan for the summer and next year because you might not be the one planning for the summer and next year, which I kind of like. Kind of like. I'll stop there for now. You guys can pick it up.
No, I mean, when it comes to the Treliving point, I mean, just like you said, listening to him yesterday, it really felt like he was kind of a dead man walking. Like he just felt like if it felt like his tone, even the way he was answering questions
His
was,
voice, man. His
yeah, he
voice.
he sounded so defeated, and it definitely sounded like a guy who knows his tenure might be coming to an end. And not to say that I think that has anything to do with what he decided to really do during the deadline, but I think there was maybe opportunities to move off of other players, even if the returns weren't as strong as what people always are going to want. But I look at some of the more middling guys at the bottom of the lineup, a guy like Callie Arenburg, who I think has commitment next year to go over to Europe. But like you're telling me, you couldn't have gotten a sixth or seventh round pick for him to as another team trying to get depth. And I know that's not a sexy move, but the idea of picking up lottery tickets and just trying to continue to fill your organization with young players, that's something that the Leafs have been dreadful at for the last decade.
Mhm.
Obviously they've been in a different position, but it just felt like this could have been maybe like a turning point where you start to say, hey, this is where we're going. We heard Treliving say that they will have a plan at some point. Don't know what that means, but clearly shows that this deadline was kind of a fly by night thing. And they were
Yeah.
just like, hey, here are your options, do with it what you can. And I think that's exactly what happened. And to be honest, it's kind of sad to look at how this team's operated in the past, and now to be at this point where it feels so like just middling, and like they feel like they have no idea what they want to do and where they want to go. And it can't feel good to be in that locker room, whether you're Craig Berube or Austin Matthews or anybody else on the team, and looking around being like, are you going to be here next year? Are you like, what are we doing? So,
And it's
it's just one of those things that I was a little bit disappointed in, but I don't know that you could have satisfied everyone anyway. So
yeah, that's the most important thing I think you have to realize is either way, whatever you did, no everyone was not gonna be satisfied with the moves that
That's
he
it.
made. It's
Yeah.
just the organization as itself, like either way, like Austin Matthews, like we'll talk like he goes out and says the right thing the other night in terms of like it's an embarrassing loss. Like, this is on me. Like, he says what everyone's been wanting for the past like 5 years. And then everyone's like, no, this isn't good. Like, everyone's ripping him. So it's just either way.
There's been so many quotes like that, like over the tenure where, yeah, it's like you said, Justin, saying the right thing, it's just never followed up with actions. There's plenty of opportunities for Austin and the team as a whole to follow up that comment. He specifically said, we have to have more pride in our play. And since that quote, I've seen zero pride in anyone's play, not just him. Like, it's just... Yeah,
So
and honestly, that's also with Brad too. Brad is someone who says the right things, and I think there is maybe some concern he might say the right things to his boss to find a way to stick around. Yeah, so I don't know on the Matthews thing. Sorry, go ahead, Justin.
I was just gonna say the most disappointing thing to me. I think if you look at Puckpedia and you go look at their draft picks, you still have 2-0 Reds in the 2026 first and second rounds. And like, getting a first in 2027 is good and all, but like, this was supposed to be a fix for next year. Like, there's talk about like, how do we get back into playoff contention this year? We think this is a one-off. You would think that those picks would try to be for this summer, where they can then flip them at the draft if that's what they're going to do to go get another player. But no, it's not, and they might lose out on a top 10 pick to Boston. So like, it's not a good look right now. It's just not.
No, they might not. Like, you've seen them play the last 3-4 games. This might be the worst team in the NHL, like, based on what I've seen. Now, I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating, but the way that they've played has been
I do the math
bad.
every day, man. I'm like,
it's
I'm
hard,
looking. I'm like, can we be worse than Vancouver? No. Can you be worse than the Flames? No. The Blackhawks? No. The Blues? No. The Jets?
Right
no,
now,
like, I'm already at 5. I'm already at 5. That's just the West. They are screwed.
They just have to hope for the tankathon, man. They just gotta hope.
Next year, like, I think it became abundantly clear over the past few weeks, like, if especially, and again, because there's been no clear path next year, and that's probably why a lot of people are so frustrated, is that unless Brad Treliving essentially brought in like Connor McDavid this deadline, like, nothing that he would have done would have been successful. You can't please everybody anyways, and that position is very pressure filled, but he would have had to have the perfect deadline, and that's just not possible. And it kind of was clear at the beginning of the day. When you look at next year, already the conversations are, we might not have either a head coach, the same GM, or it could be a lot different. Like, clearly, I don't think a retool is possible. I think that conversation almost has to be pushed by the wayside unless you bring the same guys back. Like, how do you do that with different voices and no clear plan? So the fact that you don't have a great draft set up this year, it's byproduct of a lot of things. It's a buildup of the past few years, and unfortunately, this is the result. You sort of have to eat a what sandwich as a result of this. But I do think that there's so many question marks moving forward. You're glad to have a couple of picks, as you suggested, Christian. Like, it's good to kind of get something. The only thing I think, Brandon, about some of those like deeper guys in the lineup, like, who's taking Calle Yarncroke? Like, what does he do on a night in, night out basis?
I mean, we saw David Camp go. We saw other, like,
but he's a center, I think, and that's the only maybe
fair,
thing.
But
like,
we saw Lucas Reichel go for a 6th round pick.
I do think there's truth to when Brad, Brad opened his comments, or like early on, he mentioned it multiple times. The market dictates. Yeah. This is what the market dictated. Whatever. I do think that's an excuse, but there is truth to his excuse, and that's why I talked about the timing before, right? Because I think if you enter the market earlier with some stuff, I don't know if there was ever going to be a market for a Calle Yarncroke, but I think once again, like I talked about off the top, the idea that you can bring in some dead money for this year, like trying to get a little bit more creative. I do also read into the fact that we only got draft picks as part of our returns. I think there's just another affirmation that he is on very thin ice, because he wasn't given the trust to go out and bring in more players, right? So that's another thing I read into it, because I was willing to trade like a Nick Robertson for someone of Nick Robertson's age. None of this stuff happened. It was the most vanilla deadline you could have in his position.
Well, the thing too is, like, if he's not making those decisions on, who is then? Because if it's Brad Treliving and say this is last deadline and if he's aware of it or whatever the situation is, there's nobody around him really who's going to be like, hey, go after this type of guy for the future. Then like who's going to say? There's no Shanahan. There's no like everyone below Treliving is not going to really have the goal.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure to
take it as
say,
he kind
hey,
of wasn't given permission. Like,
and he
Brad, just
wasn't
go get
given
draft
any,
picks.
and he wasn't given a direction either. Like you look at like he can't be trusted, obviously, to be the one to say, hey, this is the direction we're going. But at this point in the organization, there's nobody else who is able to do that. So I really don't think we're going to know what this team's plans are until after July 1st, because that's when you can start to really see, what they're going to have to do with what money they'll have. They're going to obviously make some sort of change in the organization. And then it's like, okay, we know we've got some picks for the next year after this. They might be looking at a retool, like a 2-year retool, where it's like this was kind of the start of it. We'll see what happens next year, but we're ready to kind of turn over if we need to, and then going into 27 or whatever. That's maybe when we start to think we can take the jump again. But that's a risky proposition, especially when you have expiring guys like Austin Matthews at some point. Like you don't have forever to figure this out. So it's going to be interesting to see what direction they eventually take at some point.
I do
love
think
it.
that. Yeah. It's just, it's so grim. Even me,
It's
I jumped
terrible.
on Puckpedia today. I tried to do some stuff. There is like as much as talk we just did about this being a horrible trade deadline, fellas, buckle up. Free agency is going to be worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
we had Elliott report on Thursday, and it kind of flows under the radar because of trade deadline afterwards that Nick Schmaltz is trending
Yeah.
towards a contract extension with the Utah Mammoth. He's one of the top 3 free agents just by points. So then you have Alex Tuch, Darren Radish. All these guys are 29, 30 years old anyways. But after that, it is a goddamn cliff. So you can't go and try and solve anything in free agency. I do think they can definitely do like a Dubas classic of the reverse Dubas classic of, oh, we don't have a second round pick at the draft. Well, on draft day, if our guys there, we'll just go and trade our 2027 second because they have 2 in 2027. They can trade it to someone, throw in a 5th, pick their guy this year if they want. Yeah, they're going to have to figure it out before July 1 because they're going to have the guys in place to then have the plan by July 1.
Oh, you got to have the
And
plan in
Brad-
place by
Yeah.
June 25th, the day of the
Yeah,
June or whatever that day is. Or
on
day of the
the
draft, sorry.
Yes, yeah, actually, yes, you're right. Before the draft. And I made the point when me and Justin talked before the deadline. I trust Mark Leach as our head of scouting as far as the draft is concerned. His pedigree and his resume is just way too good. We haven't had time to really analyze his picks yet, but I'm going to put faith in that way more than our pro scouting. And then, yeah, just on the topic of like the retool, rebuild, can you do that with Austin Matthews and William Nylander? That's a very, very heavy question.
Yeah.
I also just want to bring up there was the Matthew Nyes thing. I'm sure you guys saw it as well before the deadline, also in the same piece that Elliott put out. And that one had me scratching my head just as far as you read
They're
it.
open to
and it's
everything. They're open to
they
everything.
were open to. I think we are going to end up hearing about this in the coming days. Someone's going to have some follow-up report to that. I'll be very curious to hear what it's about.
Well,
But it just strikes me as.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Elliott said yesterday, like, if he was wrong, he would have heard something.
Yeah.
Someone would have called him right away.
Yeah,
and
no,
let him
I
know.
take
And
what
there
Elliott's
was
reporting as gospel
nothing-
as far as there's something
There was
to
no
it.
one that called him and said, "Hey, why did you put this out there?" So
Yeah, no,
obviously, Matthew Nyes was floated.
Okay, so secondarily, I think anyone who is out on Matthew Nyes after this year or like doubting his potential or whether he should be a core piece to the Leafs moving forward is out of their mind. I don't know how people are overreacting to this
I
season for a guy
disagree.
who's hurt. Okay,
No.
I
I
wanna
disagree
hear
with
your-
what your point
Okay.
is because I don't think that's why Matthew Nyes is on the market. I don't think that. I don't think.
No, I have
that
heard
is-
people just criticizing Matthew Nyes for his
Okay,
year
yeah,
and his body
yeah.
language and stuff like
So
that.
have
And
I.
I think anyone questioning him moving forward, if you're questioning just specifically his performance this year, sure, we all see that. The body language has been terrible. He's admitted to being injured. He also had a great start to the year where he was
Yep.
our assist leader early on.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fallen apart here. But I don't know. I feel like I've seen simmerings of people like saying like you should move off of him if you're doing a rebuild type of deal. No, like he is the unicorn that people wanted before he was here. I don't know how people can switch up that fast. That type of report is something that can fuel people's opinion in that way. I don't see it. I don't see
the
it.
way I took the report was, and this is the way that Elliot talked about it, is it had nothing to do with Nyes as a player and the
Yeah.
Maple Leafs not believing in him as a player. It's more so about, we got to get as many assets as possible, and this might be the player to get as many assets as possible, because if you trade a player like that, you know you're going to get a massive haul in return just because of the age. The contract is very good, and yeah, it's more of an idea of like, we need to rebuild this in the set, or retool this and try to get as many picks and assets as possible. And Matthew Nyes might be the best way to do that, to then capitalize and put a better surrounding team around Austin Matthews, as opposed to just having Matthew Nyes. So
Yeah.
that's where I think that reporting came from. And that's where I agree with the reporting.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything you said that's wrong. The only thing I'd say is I don't even think it's probably. I think there's no shadow of a doubt that he would absolutely be the probably the one piece that you'd move that would for sure bring back and stock whatever cupboards you need. But back to the conversation we had earlier, I don't know if Treliving had the like ability to do that. Like I don't know if he's running the show, but imagine you trade Matthew Nyes and whatever you return you get, you better hope like to God it's unbelievable, because then if you have no Brad Treliving moving forward and you have no young core, hopefully piece in Matthew Nyes, like what does that mean? How do we sort of put this train back on the track? And I think, we can go another half hour if we really needed, but ultimately the body language stuff, it's like, is that just a culture and byproduct of like how the room has been? I think Friedman said on one of the more recent 32 Thoughts conversations, like, they had gone in, or he had gone into the room after either the Sens game or one of the recent really tough games for the Leafs stretch, and it was really quiet. And he followed that up to say, like, normally it's not a very like loud room to begin with. It's like, okay, well, why not? Like, what's the problem? That's not a good
We had
sign.
Ryan
So,
Reeves
like,
say that. Remember, it was a
yeah,
quiet room. Like, no, this is
that's not good.
I don't think that's changing unless you're changing the people who set the culture in the room, which is like it's a Matthews
And
and
that's the
Nylander.
problem. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I came into this year like thinking, okay, well, if this year goes bad, the blame directly shifts to Austin Matthews. There is no Mitch Marner to have blame, and he absorbed a lot of it when he was here. That shield is gone, and you can criticize him. I also do think so much of this is the health. Now, that being said, I don't think you can win without a healthy Austin Matthews. If you don't have healthy Austin Matthews, I'd trade him before I would trade William Nylander or Matthew Nyes. You're not going to get a full-on return, but I see no way where you can do retool, rebuild with him on the roster and it end up in a contending team that can actually threaten for Stanley Cup if he's not healthy. There's way too many question marks there. It's been way too much of a roller coaster health season going back to even last year. I maybe you have one more regime, but once again, you don't want to have the situation where Brad comes in and says, I have to take a year to look at all this before we decide if we're trading a Mitch Marner. You don't want to repeat that. But like, I am basically at the wit's end as far as what he's looked like from a health standpoint. You can't win with him. You can win with a William Nylander looking like he's checked out bothers me zilch. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I know that the William Nylander that we all saw for 9 years is in there. Matthews, though, I have such question marks there. It's very disheartening.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Like, that's how it is. And like, I think we'll have a lot more questions answered in the next coming months, and there's probably not a whole lot of excitement, at least from a Toronto Maple Leafs perspective, for the rest of the season. We're going to see what we've seen so far over the next couple of weeks, I should say.